you can definitely hear me in a recording online of Juno. It's a musical called Juno. That's my favorite part of the process, actually. Emperor Am I, and I Want Dumplings. I'll be announcing it here in about a month, and then it'll start up in January.
Hello and welcome to Der Heilige Stuhl, the podcast with Alex and Jörn. And today we have a very special and unique guest with us today. Here is Max Miller, I would say rather famous YouTuber at this point, and Pokemon enthusiast, and overall great guy. And thank you very much for being here, Max. How are you today? How are you, Alex?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, who wouldn't be great when such a guest is in his show? So I'm totally fine. And I'm looking forward to the interview.
Okay, so let's start with my very first questions. Obviously, over the years now, you have cooked quite a lot of recipes. Do you have an overall favorite recipe of all time out of everything you did up to this point?
Oh boy, it's hard. It's hard to remember because basically once I finish filming a video, it goes out of my head and I forget that it even exists. I think that one of my favorites is the pecan pie that I made. It was pre high fructose corn syrup, and so rather different than most modern pecan pies. It was wonderful. You really got more of the pecan flavor. And my parents always have me make it for Thanksgiving and Christmas because everybody loves it so much. So that's one of the few things that I make over and over and over again.
I can relate because I actually cooked that pie as well. And I really
great.
liked it. Although I have to say, personally, I prefer the key lime pie, but that's really up to taste, I would say, especially if it's not really a German thing. I think that's why I really like it.
Very different.
Yes. So follow-up question to that. I mean, you're cooking quite a lot, right? How does one actually stay fit if you cook all the time and you have like 10 trial cakes at hand?
Well, the number one thing is I almost never have trial dishes. Part of the idea of the show is to just follow the recipe and try to make it work, and whatever comes out for the most part. Once in a while, I'll make something twice if I know that what I ended up with was not the author's intent because of a mistake that I made. Case in point, yesterday I spent all day making these 18th century mooncakes. And the recipe is not very specific at all, but it does say that the crust should be flaky. And what I ended up making was absolutely not flaky, it was stodgy. And I think it was because of the heat in my kitchen. It's very, very hot here in California right now. And my AC, while it is good, can't withstand the temperatures outside. So it just did not turn out well. So I'm going to actually have to redo it, and I'll have to cook earlier in the morning before it gets too hot. But other than that, it's rare that I have these, extra dishes. And then also, some of the dishes that I make are not particularly delicious because that's not the point of the channel.
You're welcome.
The point of the channel is to be, yeah. So, I obviously don't eat those. And also many of the things, by the time I finished cooking them and cleaning and filming and taking photographs of the food, it's been sitting on the counter for 7 to 10 hours.
Okay.
So it's not usually something that I want to keep eating after that initial taste, Once in a while, it'll be something like a cookie or something sweet that can easily be boxed up. And so I do tend to indulge in those. I think that when it came to the key lime pie, like you mentioned, I think that we ended up eating that entire thing. But yeah.
It was super delicious. Although
It was.
yeah, it pretty much killed my calories for the week. But hey,
Yeah.
you live only once, basically. So Alex, you want to ask something specific?
Yeah, I'm always asking something specific. So you just mentioned the heat in California, but you grew up in Arizona, in Phoenix. I just saw the temperature diagram over the year of Phoenix at the moment. How does it feel to grow up in such a hot city? I mean, it's like the Sahara or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you always
I,
sit inside, or do you play outside, or what do you
you're
do
always
for
in
fun?
during the summer. You're always inside. You know, as a little kid, it doesn't bother you quite as much. But by the time I was, 11 or 12, you spend the whole summer inside. And but everybody has a pool pretty much, or most people, and so the moment that the sun, is kind of behind the trees, you're in the pool all evening, and so it's not that bad. But it is very, very hot, and I'm not a fan of the heat, so it was a tough place to grow up. I don't like the sun.
So you moved to California.
So I moved to California. Yeah. It's, you go where the work takes you. But I go back to Phoenix a lot, every few weeks, at least. I'd say at least once a month. So I get to enjoy that very, very hot weather more often than I'd like.
Okay. After you finished university, you've got a classical music degree. I read this. I mean, it's openly readable Wikipedia. You moved to New York, a totally different weather from the Phoenix point of view. Why New York? Really because of the Broadway, or just to see something different?
Both, but really because of Broadway. I wanted to do musical theater, so that's where you go. It's that or London, and I actually loved it. It's
that
London has a wonderful musical theater
but even worse
scene as
weather.
well. You say worse, I say better. I would prefer the London weather, actually. I like it cold, I like it cloudy. Just like when I was in New York, the winters never really bothered me. Sometimes it would, get a little cold, but it was the summers. It's hot and humid, and they don't really do air conditioning very well. So yeah, I spend most of my life just trying to get out of the heat. That's usually my goal. But yeah, I was in New York for I think 8 years, maybe, in and out, because I would go on tour with different shows and everything, but always came back to New York. Loved it.
You made it to Broadway then. You were in fact an actor on Broadway musicals, or
yeah, I did a lot of theater in New York. Like I performed at Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and everything like that. I never did a long running Broadway show. I always kind of ended up in these very short-lived shows, except for tours. I would do longer tours. And it was actually while doing a show that lasted for almost a year, that I realized that I didn't want to do that anymore for my living, because it got a little repetitive for me. And so that's one reason why I've set up the show that I do now the way that I do, is every week it's something new. And so I can just very quickly move on from one thing to the next. I have a short attention span.
One last question regarding your Broadway career. Is there any recorded video evidence on the internet we can search for?
Yes, I believe that there is you can definitely hear me in a recording online of Juno. It's a musical called Juno that played at City Center. I sing a song that it sounds like it's playing over the radio, but I don't think the camera is on me, which is kind of frustrating. And then you can definitely see me. I did Carousel at Lincoln Center, and that was on PBS. So, you can see it definitely on PBS and I think on Amazon. But again, I'm in the ensemble, so you'll see me kind of go back and forth and singing about clam bakes and whatnot. I got to wear a jaunty little hat. It was lovely.
And we'll make it obviously easy. We post the links in the description if we can find them. If Max is okay with that. Otherwise,
right.
Obviously, if he's not okay, nobody will see this podcast. Obviously. And I think people don't realize how much work that actually is, right? I think people assume that it's just a Broadway show and all they do is a bit of singing and dancing. But they don't realize the amount of work that is needed for that to actually pull off, and then multiple times a day at times.
Yeah, it's exhausting. I mean, I love that work, but it is exhausting. Honestly, more tiring than doing a show is auditioning for shows. Really, typically, if you're an actor, maybe if you're up at the top, Patty Lupone or somebody like that. But for most actors, your job is to audition. And every once in a while you'll get a call back, and every once in a while you'll book a show. And so really what you're doing more often than not is just trying to get that next show. And that's one reason why it was just not for me. The instability of it, I did not deal well with.
I can totally relate. And I've told this story before. Obviously, I was a comedian, and several people asked me, why don't you do this for a living? And I always tell them, do you realize how few people actually make it, even as a comedian? Yeah. 10 guys, and that's about it. The rest is, I wouldn't say poor house, but you're just scraping by, and it's insanely tough. And there's a huge competition, and obviously everybody wants to have your job as well. So let's say you can find more, I wouldn't say easier, but nicer ways to make a living, like you do now.
Definitely more consistent. Well, and I mean, it's that way with every creative endeavor, whether you're an actor or a writer or a comedian. The percentage of people who actually make a living is very slim, and then the percentage of people who make a great living is almost infinitesimal. And that's why I realized that I am so unbelievably fortunate with YouTube, because it is, I think I can't remember the exact stat, but it's something like 70% of the views on YouTube go to 0.1% of the channels on YouTube. And so if you're not in that 0.1, it's very hard to make a living.
Yeah, it's essentially Mr. Beast and Outdoor Boys. more or less. And I can say that because one of them is already retired. So fair enough. So obviously, how cooking is the one thing, but how does one get the idea to combine cooking with history?
So history is really what brings me to it. History is what I love and my passion. And I got into cooking by watching the Great British Bake Off. And if you know that show at all, in the early seasons before it got big here in the US, they used to always delve into the history of whatever they would be baking. And it would always be like a minute and a half, maybe a 2-minute segment on the history of the Sally Lunn bun or apple strudel, something. And unfortunately, they got rid of those segments. But so when I knew that I wanted to make a YouTube channel. I wanted to do something creative that was outside of my day job, something for me. And one of my coworkers, I was bringing in baked goods every Monday to work. I would bake all weekend and bring it into work. And I would tell my friends the history of whatever I had baked. And one of them said, "That's your YouTube channel. that thing that you do for us every Monday, do that, but on YouTube. And so really, I credit the Great British Bake Off, and I credit that coworker with kind of giving me the idea. And then, you know, I obviously wasn't the first to do it. The Great British Bake Off did it very well, but also channels like Townsend's, which he focuses kind of just on American cooking of the mid to late 18th, and then into the early 19th century. And he does it all in garb, in outfits from the time, and in period cooking from the time, using period methods and everything like that. I knew I couldn't do that because I wanted to cover a much larger swath of time. I didn't want to limit myself to any individual period. And so I would need like 30 different kitchens, you know, to be able to kind of do that. So my idea was, okay, everything can be done in your kitchen at home. And so that's how that came about.
You just mentioned that you wanted to spread the period of time on a larger scale in your show, so that you cover. I saw you from the Roman Empire, old Greek recipes, to the World War II submarine food. On the other screen, there's your channel open, so I can read this. Do you sometimes research too deep, or have the feeling that you're getting into the small alleys of history and forget what you were looking for, or are you always straightforward when you're looking for a recipe and just leave history on the left and right side behind and go to the point?
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the process, actually.
Okay.
is the research. If I could only do one part, it would be the research part. I just love reading and you know, kind of learning stories from history. And one of my favorite things is finding connections. One minor character in some historic story will turn out to be a huge character in another aspect of history or something like that. And so, yes, it does happen. And sometimes I have to be like, okay, I need to get back to the story because I do have something to tell here. But very often, you know, I keep a kind of a running list on my computer of ideas, and very often those ideas come from a tangent that I was kind of went down, and it could be as little as one fact or one quote that I see that maybe I'm studying the history of, you know, Victorian bakeries, but then there's one line about Queen Victoria serving a certain thing at her wedding. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's really interesting. And then they started employing different bakers that specifically made this. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to cover that, but I'm putting that down. And that might be an entire episode in and of itself. And then a lot of things just don't have to do with food in any capacity. And so I will, those are just for my own edification and things that I can learn. And once in a while, I'll make a little short just being like, hey, this is something I learned. I put out a newsletter every month with some of those little things. It's like, this has nothing to do with the episode, but I thought it was really interesting, so I'm going to share that with you. And then sometimes it can be something very small that I'm able to tie into a story that doesn't have anything to do with food. And by that, I mean, like, I have a video coming up about where I make these apricot dumplings. I believe it's Marillenknödel from Austria. Yeah. And those are how the dish that I'm making. But the story that I'm telling is about the very close-knit family that was the Habsburgs, in that there was a somewhat forgotten emperor of Austria named Ferdinand I, who was very, very inbred and had a lot of disabilities and everything. And one of his famous lines was, "Emperor am I, and I want dumplings." It's one of the very few things that actually was written down. He loved dumplings, not necessarily the apricot ones, but dumplings in general. But the story is not about the dumplings. The story is about him and how the prince at the time kind of used him and controlled him. Metternich, who kind of set up Europe following the fall of Napoleon, how he used Ferdinand kind of as a puppet to do what he wanted with Austria. So that's the story that I'm telling. And it's only kind of tied to these apricot dumplings.
Yeah, but it's still a great method to basically transport the story, right? I mean, basically it's a great vessel because, like, I imagine that through your channel, I think a lot of people get exposed to an amount of history they would never ever have thought about before, and basically food is a very good way to lure them in.
That's the goal. It's kind of like
a
the
secret
history.
plan.
Yes, yeah. The food is the Trojan horse, and the history are the Greeks. It's kind of my way of teaching people history, because that's actually my passion, is telling stories, weaving together these kind of disparate little bits of history into a cohesive story that's entertaining and educational. And that's really why I started the channel, was to teach history.
So, and how much research time actually is necessary for like one video you put out? Like how many hours and how many people are we talking about? Like 2 hours, 100 hours? Because I imagine it's a lot, right?
I wish I had 100 hours a week to research. Since I put out a video every week, I do have to fit it into a week's time. It depends on the video, because it depends on how much knowledge I'm already bringing to a subject. You know, if it's a medieval video, I'm bringing a lot more because I know more about that period than, say, 18th century China. I know very little about it. So it can range from, I would say, 15 hours to 30 hours of research. I would say the average is I spend about 20 hours researching. That is the bulk of the time that it takes to make a video. And then I can write the actual script in a couple hours. It's partly done during the research process. It's not linear. And then the cooking usually takes a day, and the filming. And then it's a quick edit. A quick 6 or 7 or 8 hour edit, and you're done.
I mean, do you need?
I would say for a full video, it's about 50 hours of video, though.
Yeah, it's still. I always say this. We had other YouTubers on the channel, basically, and it's always the same thing, that people don't realize how much work actually goes into one video that is seemingly very short and fun, and people always assume, oh, he's just sitting in front of a camera, easy peasy, and they don't realize it's a full-time job involving multiple people, and like it's a huge amount of effort to pull that actually off, basically. Especially, I imagine, if you have cooking involved, which can lead to maybe multiple takes and
the cooking is definitely the more frustrating part, because it's like, oh, I'm making this recipe that if I was just cooking, it would take me 40 minutes to make, but because I'm filming it, it'll take 6 hours because of different shots and moving the camera around and getting the lighting right, which I'm not very good at anyway. It just takes so much longer than one would expect. And I know that it takes longer, and yet still every single week I underestimate how long things are going to take.
And I mentioned, obviously, you're not necessarily cooking the average stuff. Let's put it like this. So getting materials is an issue as well, I imagine. I mean, if the recipe calls for, we need 50-year-old gold meat that hung in a cave, it might be a bit dicey to get that in the States, right?
That would be rough. That would be rough. I am fortunate that I live in a large city where we have a lot of grocery stores that cater to other diets. Asian stores and Armenian grocery stores and Turkish grocery stores and Mexican grocery stores. And so you'd be surprised at how many ingredients that we think of as, oh, that's impossible to get. You go to the Chinese grocery store and they're like, yes, we have these roasted watermelon seeds that have been pounded into a powder. Absolutely.
50 flavors. I like chocolate.
Yes, seriously. Yeah. They flavor them. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know because I was to a Chinese supermarket today. So, and we have, like, where I live, we have 10 different ones, and they all have a slightly different portfolio and products, and it's very interesting. And I try to get certain Szechuan peppercorns for half a year. And finally got it. So that made my day even before we started the cast. Alex.
Yeah. Did you ever abandon a project because you didn't get the ingredients or it didn't work out?
Yeah, it has happened. It's not often. It's only happened a handful of times. Sometimes very often I'll abandon a project so early on, I don't even see it as abandoning it. It's like, I know I can't get this ingredient. Yeah. Oh, this would be interesting, but there's nothing there. More often than not, what makes me give up on a video, if I'm fairly into the process, is that there's not enough interesting history to talk about. And, a lot of people say, hey, do a video on this dish. The problem is 90% of foods don't have any interesting history behind them. It's just, this is something that's made. It's there's nothing to talk about. The only way that I can make a video of that is if what I end up talking about has nothing to do with the food, like the apricot dumpling episode. This is not a video on the history of the dumplings. It's a video on, somebody who ate dumplings. And so that is the only way I can usually make that kind of thing happen. But usually if I abandon something, it's because of a lack of story.
And do you get spammed by people with like recipe ideas? Like you open your mail and you have 100 recipes and you actually have to invest 2 hours to sift them through?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to use the word spam because they're always welcome, because I've had so many wonderful episodes come from...
I merely used it in a food context, of course.
In a food context, yes.
Yes.
It does take a long time, and so very often somebody will email me and I'll email them back 6 months later because I just have I would spend all my day going through emails and I just don't have time to do that. Or they'll send an email and it's just so long. I'm like, I want to read this, but I just don't have time to read the whole thing. So I'll put it off until I'm on a plane. That's when I do most of my email reading and writing, is when I'm flying. But yes, people send me things all the time. Again, 90% of them are, I'm not going to be able to make an episode of that because there's no interesting history, or it's very, very specific to a specific, group of people. And it just wouldn't be interesting to a larger audience because there is that aspect. It's like it needs to have some wide appeal just to make it worth, making. And it makes it easier to find history because hopefully then somebody else has already, looked into this before I have. And then a lot of times the recipes, because I do really try to work from historic recipes. And so if you're sending me your mother's recipe for whatever pie, it's like, that's great, but that's not something I can use on the channel because I want something from a historic cookbook. That's because that's just how I do stuff on the channel.
Yeah, there goes my wife's sour egg recipe, I guess. But she literally said,
I bet I could find a historic recipe for it.
yeah,
though.
she literally said that to me. Pitch him my sour egg recipe. Yeah, right. Sure. Why not? Basically. So but I imagine, I mean, obviously people are very nice if they take the effort to send you recipes. I mean, it's all good intention and like it's pure positivity, which is nice, I guess, especially in these times. But there I asked because I imagine that like you always have the occasional like jackpot recipe idea within like the emails. I imagine like somebody usually has a good idea, and you obviously you have to read all the emails because you cannot just assume like everything
you don't know
is
what's
exactly like maybe the next one is a jackpot.
Yeah, it absolutely happens, and what's really great is once in a while somebody will send me not only like a recipe or this dish, but then also some history behind it. And it's like, well, you've done the hardest part of my job, which is getting that first bit of story, finding is there anything there. And so that's always, like you said, that's a jackpot kind of thing. It's like, oh, you've saved me the first 5 or 6 hours of working on a video.
Yeah. And what I always like about those things is like crowds and especially people can be amazing. And I think that we often forget nowadays because like the media is bombarding us with negative things. But by my belief is like the majority of peoples are still amazing and nice. And I think like things like these reflect that, like you refocus and realize, oh yeah, that's right. The majority is still nice. And there's a lot of positivity out there. And a lot of people like invest time and work to make something positive. And it's just like nice to see that once in a while, basically.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the negative stuff bubbles to the top and holds so much more weight in our minds than the positive. And that goes for everything from the news to YouTube comments. I'll get 500 really kind comments and one negative comment, and it is that one negative comment that ruins my whole day. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this the way that our brain works? But it is.
We had Mark Lewis, is a British YouTuber. Essentially, he's like fitness YouTuber, doesn't even cover half of what he's doing. Like a really cool guy, really positive message. And he said something really smart, I found on our podcast. He said like, just you have to say yourself, no like sane, nice person would spend time and effort in the comment section of a YouTube video to spread like negative stuff about a person he doesn't know. Basically, you just can't take
really
those people
says more
serious.
about them.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it's like super tough to not like get it under your skin. It's like if you're an artist and you have those hecklers like in the audience, you always have some, and it's tough. But I would say we have to focus on the positive things. I would say. Alex. It's like in school, right? I always call out names.
Oh no, I'm out of questions. No. Jan asked for your favorite dish. I would like to ask you for your favorite century and place. Or your favorite, what's your favorite period in time or favorite country in for cooking, for historical cooking? What do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, it always kind of changes. Part of it's like whatever I'm researching at the time, but I always come back to, I'm a huge Anglophile. I love England and Britain in general. I love the history of Britain. So very often medieval, when it comes to history, actually, I can pinpoint it. It's England and northern France, Normandy specifically, from the year 1047 to the year 1075. That's my favorite period to study. But we don't know a lot about the food from that period, so I have to kind of go a little bit later and look at like 13th and 14th century cooking manuscripts, and so I always really enjoy food from that period. I also really love the Regency period, from the very end of the 18th century through the Napoleonic Wars up through about 1820. I find that period fascinating. It was such a period of change in so many ways. Obviously, political change, but also, the Industrial Revolution was really kicking off, and so the beginning of huge changes in our society, but then also huge changes in food, because different ingredients, at least in Western Europe, were becoming available in larger quantities. So, you really see some of the spices and foods that had been only for the elite kind of go by the wayside, because everybody can get them, and then they're no longer special. So you start to see a lot of those foods kind of falling away, and more modern cuisine starting to come about.
And do you have a favorite like dish in general, not historically, but in general, or a favorite like type? Do you like pasta or sushi, or do you say I like 14th century Chinese noodles?
I'm pretty basic. Pizza. I could eat pizza every day. Chocolate ice cream.
You're not gonna say deep dish or some weird stuff like this, right? Like normal. Chicago.
New York style pizza is my kind of thing. The kind of pizza that you can get at 2 a.m. after you've been out all night. Those chocolate ice cream and hamburgers. I am notorious for ordering hamburgers at places where you shouldn't typically order hamburgers.
McDonald's.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm talking about some place
sponsoring.
where it's like they have something really fancy. It's a very nice restaurant, and I'm like, I'll have the hamburger. I feel like you could tell a lot from a hamburger. So I love it.
Just to trigger the algorithm on YouTube, sorry, Chicago, but deep dish is not a pizza.
It's a soup.
Yeah, it's a casserole with cheese. Let's face it. Basically, yes. Alex, can you follow up? Alex, have you ever eaten or seen a deep dish pizza?
I think I've seen some memes about it, but I've never eaten one. So I know what you're talking about, but I don't want to try it. So
the thing is, it's not bad. It's just not.
It's not a pizza. It's not a pizza. Let's face it, thin crust, basically, not a lot of tomato sauce, basically on top, and then not too much ingredient-wise. Otherwise, it gets soggy.
Yeah, I'm very simple. I honestly like a margarita pizza, just a cheese pizza, or maybe some pepperoni or something like that. Is all I require. We had some wonderful pizza when we were in Rome. But it's interesting because a lot of the pizza in Rome actually gets influenced by American pizza. Their Italian pizza changed in the 1950s when Americans began coming over as tourists, because they were getting what was Italian pizza and saying, this isn't pizza. And so the Italians, many of them actually the recipes started to change to mimic some of what the American tourists were liking. So it was this interesting cultural exchange. Pizza came over to New York, changed, and then sort of made its way back. So you have to go to other parts of Italy. It's very different. And you can
funnily
get those
enough,
older styles, but
in the 50s, obviously, a lot of Italians came to Germany to work. So we have quite a lot of pizza places here, I would say. So ironically, I would say because that happened likely before that like transition from the States happened, probably here in Germany you will get a more original Italian pizza than in some places in Italy. Strangely enough,
Yeah.
and obviously to top that, obviously then some Italians here have had some weird ideas like inventing spaghetti ice cream, which is essentially vanilla
dear.
ice cream that they'll press in spaghetti form. Then they put strawberry sauce on it as a replacement for the tomato sauce. And as parmesan supplement, basically they use white chocolate. So you'll get a bowl
That
of
actually sounds good.
spaghetti. Yeah, and that's actually, I would say, probably one of the most famous German ice cream dishes you can get as here if you go out.
I'll have to try that when I'll be in Munich in
Yeah.
next month, so I'll have to
Yep,
give that
sure.
a shot if I can find it.
I don't know if you know this, but everybody outside of Bavaria don't think Bavaria is Germany. I would say for us it's like I would say it's like Texas in the States. There goes the next sponsor.
Its own area.
Yeah,
I do have to say, the one thing when it comes to pizza in Italy or just in Europe in general is the quality of the ingredients in Europe. I just find to be so vastly superior to the quality of ingredients that we have here in the States.
yes, well,
I mean, especially when it comes to like fruits and vegetables. It's so you can it can be the same exact pizza in Rome that you get here, but the flavor just is very different and really pops. So,
Is this really that big of an issue that, regarding the fruits, vegetables, and some things like that? I read about it, but I think it was just exaggerated. So, is it
no,
okay?
it's only when you actually go from one place to the next do you really notice. You get used to the fruit and vegetables, and don't get me wrong, you can find wonderful fruits and vegetables here in the States. It's just when you go to most grocery stores, those aren't the fruits and vegetables that you're getting. And it has to do, as I've read, one big thing is it has to do with the ripeness. We often pick our fruits and vegetables early, so because it takes so long to get them onto shelves and so that they last longer and everything like that. But then you're not getting it at its peak ripeness. That's one theory that I've heard. I also think that in Europe in general, there's bigger, and there are places here that do this as well, but there's a bigger emphasis put on in season.
Yes.
Is this something that's in season?
Yes.
Well, we can get almost anything all year round, because here in California and Mexico, we can grow things almost all year round, but still there is that idea that certain foods are just better when they are in season. And so, but it also is frustrating when you're in Italy and you're like, oh, I want artichokes. And they're like, it's not March. You're not getting any artichokes. It's, too bad. So it's like, well, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I would agree to a certain degree. For example, in Germany, we have like strawberry season or asparagus season. Germans are very weird about asparagus because, like, we eat the white ones, right? And
yes. Oh, and it's so good.
It's almost religious here. Like, same with like kale, which is a huge thing, like especially in northern Germany. Like you can start fist fights if you insult a kale recipe of a certain town, and every town has a different recipe. So that's like really serious. Yeah, and that's only a couple of months, like 1 or 2 months, then it's gone and it's up to the next thing here, right? Because like strawberries only grow like for 3 months and then they're gone essentially. Obviously, you have this watery stuff here in the supermarkets as well. But I would agree to what you say. But I think it's also like a very, obviously the climate is different, and it's just a different thing. I would say I should add half of my family is from the States, so I have some reference because as a child I was there like every year in Florida, which is also an extreme example. I would say it was very different than Germany. let's put it this way.
Yes, I would think so.
But now back to the guest, obviously. So obviously you took your, I would say, recipe to a next level, because nowadays you're flying everywhere and you're doing like a clip or a video from Austria, and next thing you're in Germany, and next thing you're in Great Britain. So that's even more work, right? But I imagine a lot of more fun.
Yeah, I think it seems like I travel a lot more than I do. I do travel a lot, but it's not as constant as some people seem to think. But I will be back in Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Spain in October and November. So, yeah, I started when I started to get to travel, kind of as COVID went away. My goal was to film while I traveled, and I just found it to be a very poor use of my travel time. It would take an entire day or more to film an episode, and it often wouldn't turn out as well because I'm not filming in my location or whatever, and it just was, the logistics were difficult. So now I use my travel more as research. And I'm able to, I film a little bit, with my iPhone, and kind of get some stuff for videos that way. But I don't film full videos now when I travel, and I'm able to get so much more research done that then when I come back here, I can film a dozen videos that have to do with my travels, because I was able to do the research, which is really the point of the travel in the first place. So yeah, I love travel. I would do it 8 months out of the year if I could. And it is such a wonderful way to learn. Every time I think, gosh, I'm starting to run out of episode ideas, if I go on a 2-week trip somewhere, a 3-week trip somewhere, I come back with a dozen ideas, and those always spawn other things, because there's just so much. It's so easy to think, well, I know everything. I've covered this. I know everything about this topic. I can't learn anymore. There's nothing else out there. And there's always tons of stuff out there. You just don't know what you don't know. And travel really helps that, because I don't know, especially in Europe, but other places as well. But especially in Europe, I find that there is such a importance placed on history, and so wherever you are, it doesn't take a lot of digging to find out the history of a place. First of all, there is a lot of history simply because there's a lot of time passed, but there's a great, I don't want to say preservation of it, but almost desire to share that history and teach that history, and that's not always the case in everywhere that you go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also visit libraries when you're here, like from the university or something like that? When you know there's a book you want to see in
I have.
in real life.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's difficult because a lot of the books that I want to see in real life are, behind. You have to get permission to see it, and there's often a lot of hoops to jump through, and language is very often a barrier. There's speaking of language, and I have this cookbook which I got at a shop in Austria last time I was there, 2 times ago. The Deutsche Küche, which is one of, if not Austria's oldest cookbook. But the problem is it's all written in Fraktur, which I have extremely difficult time reading. I've gotten better. But so, sometimes you'll see a document and it's like, oh, this is wonderful. But it's in a script that I can't read. Or, my Latin is okay, but it's not good enough to just translate a document there on the spot, especially if it's handwritten by a monk from, Fulda or something like that. So usually it's more like I love seeing these things, but I'm not sitting there studying them for long periods of time simply because I'm not able to make the best use of that time.
Mm-hmm. So before we come to a close, I have to basically shorten it a bit because we are almost at 1 hour. That's usually a good, like the concentration span of viewers usually goes down after 40 minutes. I would say. My very last question for you would be, what does the future hold for Max Miller? Will we see another cookbook? Anything grand, or what are your plans? And lastly, obviously, your chance to plug anything you want shamelessly into the camera, and we'll put it out there in Germany.
So there is another cookbook coming. I am working on it. It is all about foods that have to do with different disasters and wars and periods of strife throughout history, because even during, the Napoleonic Wars or the Black Death, we were eating. So it has to do with that. I am also to hold people over until the next cookbook, because that is still a little ways away. I'm going to be putting out something called the Tasting History Recipe Society. I'll be announcing it here in about a month, and then it'll start up in January, where I'll be mailing old recipes to your house along with a modernized version and some history along with it. So it's kind of like getting an episode of Tasting History in the mail every month. You'll get a couple recipes. And that will be international, so people in Germany can get it. So be on the lookout for that.
I really like it, actually. And obviously, as you might have seen, which is still available, right? You can still get that. Yes. And I would highly recommend that, because it's really great recipes in there.
Thank you.
And obviously, thank you so much for taking time off. I know you are very busy, and honoring us with your appearance here on our podcast. For me, it's a lot of fun, a lot of interesting stuff, actually. Alex liked it too, I think.
Me on.
Yeah, Alex liked it too. No, thank you very much. It was really awesome. Jörn's practicing his English much more frequently than I do, so he's much more fluent. I have to think a lot before I talk, so he's much more present in our English casts. So
to be fair, I don't even think when I'm talking German. So
I was going to say, Alex, I think it's a good thing that people think more before they speak than they probably do.
Yeah.